All right, welcome back to the Daily Facts. And we're getting into part 3 of the read through of the Sidney Powell Georgia lawsuit for voter fraud, election fraud. So let's get right into it. Rule 183-1-14-0.9-15 is indirect and irreconcilable conflict with OCGA 21-2-386A2, which prohibits the opening of absentee ballots until election day. After the opening of the polls on the day of the primary election or runoff, the registrars, or absentee ballot clerks shall be authorized to open the outer envelope on which is printed the oath of the elector in such a manner as not to destroy the oath printed thereon, provided, however, that the registrars or absentee ballot clerk shall not be authorized to remove the contents of such outer envelope or to open the inner envelope marked official absentee ballot, except as otherwise provided in this code section. Emphasis added. In plain terms, the statute clearly prohibits opening absentee ballots prior to Election Day, while the rule authorizes doing so 3 weeks before Election Day. There is no reconciling this conflict. The State Election Board has authority under OCGA 21 2 31 to adopt lawful and legal rules and regulations, but no authority to promulgate a regulation that is directly contrary to an unambiguous statute. Rule 183 1 14 0.9 15 is therefore plain and indisputably unlawful. The State Election Board readopted Rule 183 1 14 0.9 15 on November 23, 2020, for the upcoming January 2020 runoff election. Unlawful audit procedures. According to Secretary Raffensperger, in the presidential general election, 2,457,880 votes were cast in Georgia for President Donald J. Trump, and 2,472,002 votes were cast for Joseph R. Biden, which narrowed in Donald Trump's favor after the most recent recount. Secretary Raffensperger declared that for the hand count, per the instruction given to counties as they conduct their audit, triggered full hand counts. Designated monitors will be given complete access to observe the process from the beginning. While the audit triggered recount must be open to the public and media, designated monitors will be able to observe more closely. The general public and the press will be restricted to a public viewing area. Designated monitors will be able to watch the recount while standing close to the election's workers conducting the recount. Political parties are allowed to designate a minimum of 2 monitors per county at a ratio of 1 per monitor per party for every 10 audit boards in a county. Beyond being able to watch to ensure the recount is conducted fairly and securely, the 2-person audit boards conducting the hand count call out the votes as they are recounted, providing monitors and the public an additional way to keep tabs on the process. Let's just read this footnote. 10. Office of Raffensperger monitors closely observing audit triggered full hand recount. Transparency is built into process. Okay, let's keep going. The audit was conducted OCGA 21 2 498. This code section requires that audits be completed in public view and authorizes the State Board of Elections to promulgate regulations to administer an audit to ensure that collection of validly cast ballots is complete, accurate, and trustworthy throughout the audit. Plaintiffs can show that Democrat majority counties provided political parties and candidates, including the Trump campaign, no meaningful access or actual opportunity to review and assess the validity of mail in ballots during the pre canvassing meetings. While in the audit or recount, they witnessed Trump votes being put into Biden piles. Non parties, Amanda Coleman and Maria Diedrich, are two individuals who volunteered to serve as designated monitors for the Donald J. Trump Presidential Campaign, Inc., the Trump campaign, on behalf of the Georgia Republican Party, at the hand count, attached hereto and incorporated herein as exhibits 2 and 3 respectively, are true and correct copies of 1. The affidavit of Amanda Coleman in support of plaintiff's motion for temporary restraining order, the Coleman affidavit, and 2. The affidavit of Maria Diedrich in support of plaintiff's motion for temporary restraining order, the Diedrich affidavit. See Exhibit 11, Coleman affidavit 2, Exhibit 12, Diedrich affidavit 2. The affidavit set forth various conduct amounting to federal crimes, clear improprieties, insufficiencies, and improper handling of ballots by county officials and their employees that Ms. Coleman and Ms. Diedrich personally observed while monitoring the hand count. See Exhibit 11, Coleman Affidavit 3-10, Exhibit 12, Diedrich Affidavit 4-14. As a result of her observations of the hand count as a Republican Party monitor, Ms. Diedrich declared there had been no meaningful way to review or audit any activity at the hand count. See Exhibit 12, Diedrich Affidavit 14. As a result of their observations of the hand count as Republican Party monitors, Ms. Coleman likewise declared there was no way to tell if any counting was accurate or if the activity was proper. See Exhibit 12, Coleman Affidavit 10. On Election Day, when the Republican poll watchers were, for a limited time, present and allowed to observe in various polling locations, they observed and reported numerous instances of election workers failing to follow the statutory mandates relating to two critical requirements, among other issues. 1, a voter's right to spoil their mail-in ballot at their polling place on Election Day and then to vote in person. And 2, the ability for voters to vote provisionally on Election Day when a mail-in ballot has already been received for them, but when they did not cast those mail-in ballots, who sought to vote in person during early voting but was told she already voted. She emphasized that she had not. The clerk told her he would add her manually with no explanation as to who or how someone voted using her name. Attached hereto as Exhibit 13, Affidavit Ursula Wolf. Another observer for the ballot recount testified that at no time did I witness any recounter or individual participate in the recount verifying signatures on mail-in ballots. Attached hereto as Exhibit 14, Nicholas Zaher affidavit. In some counties, there was no actual hand recounting of the ballots during the hand count, but rather, county officials and their employees simply conducted another machine count on the same ballots. See Exhibit 9, 10. That will not reveal the massive fraud of which plaintiffs complain. A large number of ballots were identical and likely fraudulent, and Affiant explains that she observed a batch of utterly pristine ballots. Most of the ballots had already been handled. They had been written on by people and the edges were worn. They showed obvious use. However, one batch stood out. It was pristine. There was a difference in the texture of the paper. It was if they were intended for absentee use but had not been used for that purposes. There was a difference in the feel. These different ballots included a slight depressed prefold, so they could be easily folded and unfolded for use in the scanning of machines. There were no markings on the ballots to show where they had come from or where they had been processed. These stood out. In my 20 years of experience handling ballots, I observed that the markings for the candidates on these ballots were unusually uniform, perhaps even with a ballot marking device. But my estimate in observing these ballots, approximately 98% constituted votes for Joe Biden. I only observed two of these ballots as votes for President Donald J. Trump. See Exhibit 15 attached here too. The same affiant further testified specifically to the breach of the chain of custody of the voting machines the night before the election, stating, "We typically receive the machines, the ballot marking devices, on the Friday before the election, with a chain of custody letter to be signed on Sunday, indicating that we had received the machines and the counts on the machines when we received and that the machines had been sealed. In this case, we were asked to sign the chain of custody letter on Sunday, even though the machines were not delivered until 2 a.m. in the morning on election day. The Milton precinct received its machines at 1 a.m. in the morning on election day. This is unacceptable, and voting machines should not be out of custody prior to an election day. Evidence of fraud. A pattern showing the absence of mistake. The stunning pattern of the nature and facts of fraud demonstrate an absence of mistake. The same affiant further explained in sworn testimony that the breach included when we did receive the machines, they were not sealed or locked. The serial numbers were not were not what were reflected on the related documentation. An affiant testified that while in Henry County, I personally witnessed ballots cast for Donald Trump being placed in the pile for Joseph Biden. I witnessed this happen at Table A, see Exhibit 14, paragraph 27. The affiant further testified that when this was brought to Ms. Pitt's attention, it was met with extreme hostility. At no time did I witness any ballot cast for Joseph Biden be placed in the pile for Donald Trump. See Exhibit 14, paragraph 28. Another affiant in the mail-in ballot and absentee ballot recounting process testified in her sworn affidavit that on November 16, 2020, it was also of particular interest to me to see that signatures were not being verified and there were no corresponding envelopes seen in sight. See Exhibit 10 at paragraph 7. Yet another affiant in the recount process testified that he received pushback and a lack of any cooperation and was even threatened as if he did something wrong when he pointed out the failure to follow the rules with the observers while open mail-in ballot recounting was occurring, stating, "However, as an observer, I observed that the precinct had 12 counting tables, but only one monitor from the Republican Party. I brought it up to Erica Johnston since the recount rules provided for one monitor from each party per 10 tables or part thereof." See attached here to Exhibit 16, Ibrahim Reyes affidavit. 82. Another affiant explains a pattern of behavior that is alarming in his position as an observer in the recount on absentee ballots with barcodes. He testified, "I witnessed two poll workers placing already separated paper machine receipt ballots with barcodes in the Trump tray, placing them into the Biden tray. I also witnessed the same poll workers putting the already separated paper receipt ballots in the no vote and Jorgensen tray and removing them and putting them inside the Biden tray. They then took out all of the ballots out of the Biden tray and stacked them on the table, writing on the count ballot sheet. See attached here to Exhibit 17, paragraphs 4 through 5, affidavit of Concetta Johnson. Another affiant, a Democrat, testified in his sworn affidavit that before he was forced to move back to where he could not see, he had in fact seen absentee ballots for Trump inserted into Biden's stack and counted as Biden votes. This occurred a few times. See attached here to Exhibit 18 at paragraph 12, affiant of Carlos Silva, or affidavit. Yet another affiant testified about the lack of process and the hostility only towards the Republican Party, which is a violation of the Equal Protection Clause. He testified, I also observed throughout my 3 days in Atlanta, not once did anyone verify these ballots. In fact, there were no authentication process in place and no envelopes were observed or allowed to be observed. I saw hostility towards Republican observers, but never towards Democrat observers. Both were identified by badges, CID at PARS 13-14, probably paragraph 13 and 14. Another affiant explained that his ballot was not only not processed in accordance with election law, but he also witnessed people reviewing his ballot to decide where to place it, which violated the privacy of his ballot. And when he tried to report it to a voter fraud line, he never received any contact or cooperation, stating, I voted early on October 12th at the precinct at Linwood Park. Because of irregularities at the polling location, I called the voter fraud line to ask why persons were discussing my ballot and reviewing it to decide where to place it. When I called the state fraud line, I was directed to a worker in the office of the Secretary of State. See attached here to Exhibit 19, Andrea O'Neill, affiant at paragraph 3. He further testified that when he was an observer at the Lithonia location, he saw many irregularities and specifically saw an auditor sort Biden votes that he collected and sorted into 10 ballot stacks, which the auditor did not show anyone. Okay. Another affiant testified about the use of different paper for ballots that would constitute fraud, stating, I noticed that almost all of the ballots I received were for Biden. Many batches went 100% for Biden. I also observed that the watermark on at least 3 ballots were solid gray instead of transparent, leading me to believe the ballot was counterfeit. I challenged this, and the elections director said it was a legitimate ballot and was due to the use of different printers. Many ballots had markings for Biden only and no markings on the rest of the ballot. See attached here to Exhibit 20, affiant of Deborah J. Fisher at PARS 456. An affiant testified that while at the audit, while in Henry County, I personally witnessed ballots cast for Donald Trump being placed in the pile for Joseph Biden. I witnessed this happen at Table A. See attached here to as Exhibit 22, Kevin Peterford at PAR 29. Another affiant testified that I witnessed 2 poll workers placing already separated paper machine receipt ballots with barcodes in the Trump tray, placing them into the Biden tray. I also witnessed the same 2 poll workers putting the already separated paper receipt ballots in the no vote and Jurgensen tray and removing them and putting them inside the Biden tray. They then took out all of the ballots out of the Biden tray and stacked them on the table, writing on the count ballot sheet. See Exhibit 17, Johnson, paragraph 4-5. Another affiant, a Democrat, testified in his sworn affidavit before he was forced to move back to where he could not see. He had in fact seen, I also saw absentee ballots for Trump inserted into Biden's stack and counted as Biden voters. This occurred a few times. See Exhibit 18, paragraph 12. A Republican National Committee monitor in Georgia's election recount, Hale Susi, told an undercover journalist there are individuals counting ballots who have made continuous errors, writes O'Keefe, Project Veritas. Watch. Latest Project Veritas video reveals multiple ballots meant for Trump went to Biden in Georgia. Okay, we're going to stop there and we'll pick up in part 4 very soon. Thanks for stopping by the Daily Facts. Do like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment below, and we'll talk again soon. Bye.